afternoon. Thank you for joining us today on our YouTube channel. My name is Catherine Leswing, and I work for the Bureau of Student Wellness at the New Hampshire Department of Education. Today, I am joined by a very dedicated teacher and student from Franklin High School here in New Hampshire to talk about student voice. We know in New Hampshire that, and across the United States, that when schools provide students a platform to speak up, they acquire a greater sense of agency in their education, a better internal sense of competency, greater feelings of community and belonging amongst their peers and teachers. So we know that student voice is a very important part of students' education. And we also know that it's sometimes one of those pieces of education that's overlooked. So we're really excited today to have Haley Goodwin, who's a social studies teacher at Franklin High School, and her student Maya V, who worked together this past year to put together a project that would really amplify student voice in Franklin. So I am not going to go into much more detail than that, and I'm really going to just turn it over to our two participants. So Maya, could you tell our audience a little bit about the recent project that you did in Franklin that was centered around student voice?
Yeah, okay, so we have a class at Franklin High School. It's called Current Issues, where we basically just discuss current issues that are happening. And obviously remote learning is a huge thing this year. So we put together a little questionnaire with questions about like home learning environments and like what teachers are doing like right and wrong this year, and like workload and assignment preferences. And we broke into groups and went around the school to like not interrupt classes, but like to see if they'd be willing to take our questionnaire. And we gathered data. It was completely anonymous, so you could put whatever you wanted on it. And then once we all finished, we got back to class and we went over the data together as a class and just discussed.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I had a conversation with my students just wondering how I was doing as a teacher. How am I doing in regards to remote learning? What went well, what didn't go well during this quarter? And part of that conversation, I heard things that really talked about how different teachers were doing things differently in their classrooms. Students had different opinions on how things were going. And so just during those class conversations, it kind of built into something more where I felt like the students' voices need to be heard across the school district, not just within my classroom to me personally. And so they really were excited about it. I was really proud of them for the work that they did. They worked really hard and had quite a turnout on that questionnaire. So they did really well.
That's great. What were some of the things that you found from the questionnaire?
Let's see, I can pull it up too, but I know that we definitely learned that home life was very difficult during this time, very challenging. People were stressed, people were anxious, feeling depressed. A lot of students were on their beds doing their homework. Remember, Maya, we were talking about that, falling asleep. That was a big thing that we got out of that for sure. Also, assignment loads were very different depending on subject and teacher. And so trying to find some sort of continuity between teachers, I think, was really important to say, hey, this is what social studies is doing. Here's what math is doing. How can we try to balance each other out with workload? Am I missing anything, Maya?
There was also a question about how you think remote learning is affecting our grades. And we like talked about how like if we think our grades are being better or worse due to how we're learning.
Just thinking about how students are really the experts in that. They know what it feels like to have 5 different teachers who all are giving different workloads, and maybe there's not continuity there. And so I really loved this project so much. Why, just kind of zooming out and thinking more generally, why do you think integrating student voice into school decision making, whether it's like academics or extracurricular activities? Sorry, and I'm totally asking this question the wrong way. In what ways do you think integrating student voice can impact student well-being and mental health?
I think in a way it could show like administration what students really need out of it, and happier students will lead to more engaged students. So I think overall like grades will go up and test scores will be better. And it also allows students to get plans that are like fit to them. Like in our school, I know that if a student is really struggling doing the 2 days a week at school, we have plans to offer them to come the 4 days, but they'd be like in the library the days they're supposed to be remote.
Yeah. I also think, you know, we're not trying to give a top-down approach. You know, this is a community, and students are a major part of that community. You know, we're here to serve them. So if we don't know what their needs are, that can be very challenging for the teachers who are trying to provide that instruction. I know I've learned a lot through this project of, you know, what does that community building look like when students are at home? It's very challenging over Zoom. You know, this morning, I'm trying to get students to turn their cameras on and be engaged, which is challenging. But I think if students say, hey, this is what makes me feel comfortable, this is what doesn't make me feel comfortable, that can make a difference in teaching style. And also just making sure that students feel valued. You know, sometimes they don't feel that at home. And so to have that open communication with teachers and administrators can be very important, whereas that's not the case in every household.
Yeah, definitely. What barriers do you think exist, maybe in Franklin or just in general? We know that student voice isn't always the first thing a school or district is thinking to really focus on. What barriers do you think exist for amplifying student voice in the school day?
I think that sometimes students, especially in high school, could prioritize wants over needs. Like maybe they'll want less schoolwork, but that would lead to like not being able to learn everything they need to out of the curriculum for the class. And a lot of students have contrasting opinions on matters. So not everyone's wants can be like met if we incorporate everyone's voice into it.
Yeah. I also think very similar to what you were saying, you know, if students just got what they wanted, you know, they weren't getting as much as what they needed to be pushing themselves and to grow. So I think that, you know, the teachers need to connect with the students to say, here's what I need, but here's what we can do to push you to go further than just what you want. You know, I think sometimes in Franklin, I've seen it in other schools as well, they don't have that high bar set for themselves. You know, they set a bar, but the teachers have a higher bar that they can push those students to. So I think that can be a challenge, you know, trying to bring those voices together, not just having one side versus the other. So yeah, I think it's just about that pushing forward.
Yeah, I love that the anonymous piece of this survey, because I think it allowed students to both speak freely, but also to sort of capture as a whole where the student body was at. So I really appreciated that piece. Do you think the survey would have happened without having that class that really focused on current events?
I feel like a lot of the teachers at our school are very passionate about like what students need, especially at home now. So I feel like even if we didn't have the class, it would have happened eventually, especially at Franklin with all the caring teachers.
That's great to hear. And so this kind of leads into my last question for you both, which is, what are some ways do you think we could make it easier, or schools or teachers or districts could make it easier to incorporate student voice into education?
I was thinking we could do more of these questionnaires, like some updates throughout the year that could really help see how kids are growing and adjusting to this, because last year we didn't have Zoom calls. So this year we're all doing something new. And also like incorporate students into like board meetings. I don't know how that would work essentially, but I think having either like a student representative or just having students sit into like those like meetings where they decide on what happens with the students would really help incorporate our voice.
I love that. That was really great. I just have, you know, it starts with the small conversations. You know, for us with this questionnaire, it was just us having a basic conversation, and they said to me, hey, we want other students and other teachers to hear our voice. So I think that teachers should just be encouraged to have those smaller conversations and see where they lead to. A couple of years ago, I had students come to me after the Columbia gas line crisis in Massachusetts saying, hey, we've got friends and family down there, we want to do something. And I thought, oh, maybe a canned food drive or something like that. No, it turned into a murder mystery spaghetti supper, where we had from all over the state coming in and participating in that event. So it's just, you know, what do the students want? What do they need? And how can you push them? How can you teach them through what they want to do? But it starts with small conversations.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I think it's so important that we really amplify examples of student voice in our own state. And I just want to thank you both also for hanging in this year, because this has been a year unlike any other in education for both teachers and students. And so the fact that you're pushing to really put students front and center to see how we can shape education to best serve everyone, I think is just really remarkable. And it just makes me proud to be a New Hampshire resident to hear stories like this. So thank you so much. And thank you viewers for listening to us today. And we hope to catch you back sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Leswing, and I'm with the Bureau of Student Wellness at the New Hampshire Department of Education. And I am joined here today with Emily, who's a junior at Hudson. And she is here today to talk to us about her club and her advocacy work that she's been doing at the high school in part of a series that we're doing about student voice. So we know research tells us that student voice is really key to a strong education, and that when students are given the chance to speak up, they acquire greater sense of agency in their education. They have a better internal sense of competency and greater feelings of community and belonging among peers and teachers. And so we are really excited to hear from Emily today. So Emily, I guess I'm going to just jump in with the questions here. Could you tell us a little bit about your project Bring Change to Mind at Alvern High School and how it centers around student voice?
Yeah, so Bring Change to Mind is actually a larger organization in California founded by Glenn Close, and they sponsor high school clubs all around the country. And this summer I decided that I wanted to bring something to Alvern that was going to be focused on advocacy for students' mental health, because I felt it wasn't something that was talked about enough in my school or my community. And after some research, I settled on Bring Change to Mind. I thought it was a great program. And so we meet about twice a month, and the way our meetings typically run is we learn about something, about an issue, and then we do something to help us to provide ourselves with resources. And then we try to do something over the course, the time between our meetings, that will help our community and give them the resources that we found in our meetings. Yeah, it is entirely around student voice. That's why I liked it so much and why I chose it. We do have a staff advisor, because that's required at our school, and he's great. He helps us out, but he's also very good at letting us run our meetings. So we decide what we dictate. We dictate what we talk about, what we're going to do about it. So it's a great structure for us, because we get to do the talking directly to the other kids our age in our school, which we think has been really successful. We produce videos often, which is what have been most successful for us, especially because some of our students in our school are entirely remote learning, so it's hard to reach everyone. And we think that this is a great way to connect with people in a time where connecting is hard. And you can physically see other students and be like, hey, that kid is in my math class, and like he's doing this, so maybe I can talk about it. Maybe I can do that too.
Yeah, I know our office shared one of the videos your group created about just connecting and speaking up if you're feeling isolated. And it was really great to see a bunch of faces, even though I didn't know any of the students personally. It did feel like, oh, there is, people are still out there, and we are all going through something together. And so I think that's a great way to connect people. I have a question about, finding the group Change to Mind. Was that something that just was interesting to you and you decided you really wanted to bring it to Alvern, or how did that idea come about?
Yeah, well, mental health advocacy is something that's been super important to me for a long time, and I wanted to find a way to bring it to my community more than just a person talking about it. And so over the summer, especially with quarantine and coronavirus, I decided that this is something that needs to be talked about now. And so I decided to look into how I can create change in my community and in my school. And I just through research stumbled across a few organizations, and Bring Change to Mind is one that really stood out, because it seems like they were going to be really helpful in helping us bring that message.
That's great. So do you feel like, thinking about the process in your high school or that's available for students, or even if you're reflecting on your whole education, do you feel like, how did that process go for you as a student saying, hey, I would like to do this? Was it easy? Do you think it's something that students are encouraged to do? Or just in general, how is it that students are given the chance to really bring their voice to the table in their education?
Yeah, it was very easy for me. My school is very supportive of me. I reached out to a staff member that I trusted and who I knew would back me up on something like this. And he said 100%, I'm in, let's talk to the school. And all I really had to do was talk to my principal, and he approved the idea. And then it was all about registering with Bring Change to Mind. I know a few kids in my school who created their own clubs. I think our school is pretty open to it, which is super nice. As long as you can have a staff advisor, you can kind of start a club with approval. And so I really like that about Alvern, that it's really open to bringing what students want and our voices.
That's so good to hear. And I think there's a couple of sort of lessons I picked out of that. One is, and we already know this, that the importance of having supportive staff or teachers there for students to say, hey, I have an idea. Can you help me do this? So it sounds like Alvern is really great in that environment. And then just the idea that, encouraging students to do that. And I'm sure when other students have seen you do it and they're like, oh, maybe I can do that. So that power of example there, that's really great. Did you encounter any barriers, or was there anything that was a little bit difficult for you to get off the ground?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things was finding our first group of students. It was like we had this idea, and I got approval from the school, and to register with Bring Change to Mind, you had to show that you had a group of students who were willing to work and to join it, or it would have been a waste of everyone's time. And so I didn't really know in this age how to reach out to people. Couldn't really hang flyers around school. Not everyone's in school. So I just tried to put it out on my social media, see who answered, and then what was great was that other people would share it on theirs once they had become part of the club, and it's just sort of steadily grown, but it's been so great to watch people come in. I have more members than I ever anticipated. I mean, for my first meeting, I had about 12 people, which might not sound like a lot, but it was a lot more than I had expected to come to my first meeting. And they bring in new people all the time. It's a very open door. People come and go, and it's great to see them come in. But I think that it is difficult to sort of find where you're going to start from, because you can have an idea, but it's about how you're going to get it off the ground.
Yeah, definitely. And I think about, I taught high school for a long time too, and I would run clubs after school. And sometimes it was just the idea of, is it something that students feel like is valuable enough to stick around for at the end of the day? So that, to me, 12 students is like, yeah, that's a great number of students.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is that everyone who's there really wants to be there. I was never like, hey guys, you should join us because we'll have like cupcakes at meetings, and like you should just join it because it'll look good on college. Everyone who joined it was like, I think this is such a great idea. This is so important. Let me tell my friends about this. And I think the fact that all of them are also passionate about it, equally as passionate as me, is half the battle, because they all want to make this change, and so they're super involved, and it's a great group of students.
That's great to hear. So I'm going to close us up with one question about sort of what you all have done as a group, and what maybe you think some of your big accomplishments are as a group, and how you've had your voices heard.
Yeah, so it took us a few meetings to sort of figure out our rhythm. We didn't know exactly what we wanted to do. We were glad that we had the platform. We put out a few things on the announcements, but they were mostly advertising. And we kind of realized that we were learning things. We were getting education from presentations that were supplied to us through Bring Change to Mind, and we were learning about all these different facets of mental health. And then in each meeting, we would do something for ourselves. And so when we talked about seasonal depression, we made happiness jars so you can pick something happy out when you're sad. And we just did a bunch of different things, and we thought that it was really helpful to us. So we wanted to know how we could bring that to our community, because that was the whole point of Bring Change to Mind, was to bring the change to the school and to the community. And so it was our advisor's idea to make a video. And that's something that has really carried with us throughout the course of the semester. We've made 3 videos, I believe. And the This Is Hope one that you've talked about is the one that really gained us the most traction. And I think it's great because it's a platform we created for ourselves. We're not waiting for someone else to give us one. We're saying, nope, we're going to make a video and we're going to share it. And it's going to make its way wherever it makes its way. Sometimes that's the Department of Education, and sometimes that's just like our Facebook pages. But someone's going to see it no matter what. And that's what's important to us. And having that platform that's sort of self-sufficient, that we're providing, we're filling, and we're allowing others to join is something that's been so successful for us, because then we're not relying on others. We aren't actively creating the change we want to see.
Thank you so much, Emily. This is really inspiring, and I just can't wait to see what you all get into next. But I really appreciate you taking your time today to talk to us about what you've been doing. I think, we were doing a little spotlight on student voice, but we're the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness. So obviously your club is very near and dear to our mission as well. So I can't thank you enough for coming and talking today and really being a guiding example of how schools and students can amplify their voice to make change. So thank you again. And
thank you.
And we look forward to seeing what you're doing in the future.
Thank you.